August 1995, Lagos, Nigeria. A respected bank director sat in his office, crafting what would become one of the most audacious cons in financial history. In just 3 years, he would convince a Brazilian bank to hand over $242 million for an airport that was never for sale. This is the story of a scam so brazen, so perfectly executed, that it nearly brought down an entire bank. A tale of deception that would involve forged documents, impersonated government officials, and a non-existent construction project. This is the story of Emmanuel Nwude, the man who sold an airport that wasn't his to sell.
Yesterday about a guy who he sold a non-existent airport to a bank. There's been several stories over the last couple of weeks.
In the mid-1990s, Nigeria's financial sector was a complex web of opportunity and corruption. It was in this environment that Emmanuel Nwude thrived. A director at the Union Bank of Nigeria, Nwude was no ordinary banker. He was charming, intelligent, and possessed an intimate understanding of how international business deals worked. More importantly, he understood human psychology. He knew how to exploit greed. His target was Nelson Sakaguchi, a director at one of Brazil's largest banks based in Sao Paulo, Banco Noroeste. Sakaguchi was ambitious, always looking for the next deal that would cement his legacy, and Nwude was about to offer him exactly that. The bait was simple yet irresistible. Nwude claimed to be representing Paul Ogwuma, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. According to Nwude's elaborate story, the Nigerian government was secretly planning to build a new international airport in Abuja, the nation's capital. This wasn't just any airport. This was going to be a state-of-the-art facility that would transform Nigeria into West Africa's aviation hub. But there was a catch. The project needed to remain confidential. The government needed discreet foreign investment to fund the construction before making it a public announcement. The proposed deal was structured brilliantly. The bank would provide financing for the airport construction, and in return, the bank would receive the contract to build the airport, along with ownership rights that would generate massive returns once the facility became operational. The numbers were staggering. Initial estimates suggested profits in the hundreds of millions. For Sakaguchi, this was an opportunity of a lifetime, but Nwude knew that numbers alone wouldn't be enough. He needed to create an entire reality. So he assembled a team. He brought in a team of 5. Together, they would play the roles of government officials, legal advisors, and construction consultants. They forged documents on official letterhead and created fake contracts stamped with counterfeit government seals. They even arranged meetings in government buildings, using the Nwude connection to access locations that would lend credibility to the charade. Nwude didn't ask for $242 million upfront. That would have triggered immediate suspicion. Instead, he started small and strategic. The initial request was for just $5 million, presented as a deposit that would secure the bank's position as the exclusive foreign partner. Nwude then crafted a sense of urgency and scarcity. He told Sakaguchi that several European banks were circling, that the Nigerian government was days away from making a decision, and that this deposit would lock in the preferred status. To sweeten the deal, Nwude provided what appeared to be a letter of intent from the central bank, guaranteeing that the initial deposit would be held in escrow and fully refundable if the project didn't proceed. It was a classic con artist technique. Make the first ask small enough to seem reasonable, and create artificial time pressure to prevent thorough due diligence. Sakaguchi, seeing a relatively modest investment that could open the door to hundreds of millions in returns, authorized the transfer. Once that first payment cleared, Nwude knew he had him hooked. Between 1995 and 1998, the con unfolded in stages. Each wire transfer was justified by another fabricated milestone: environmental impact assessments, land acquisition costs, preliminary construction expenses, engineering consultations. With each payment, Nwude provided receipts, reports, and photographs. He showed Sakaguchi aerial surveys of the proposed site. He presented architectural renderings of the terminal buildings. He even arranged site visits, where Sakaguchi could see workers that Nwude claimed were conducting geological surveys. The money flowed. $10 million, 25 million, 50 million. Each time, Sakaguchi returned to Brazil, presented the documentations to his colleagues, and authorized another transfer. The bank's board raised concerns, but Sakaguchi assured them the deal was legitimate. He had met with government officials, he had seen the paperwork, he had visited the site. Everything checked out. By 1997, the bank had transferred over $190 million. The airport construction, according to Nwude, was progressing on schedule. But behind the scenes, the money was funneled through a complex network of accounts. Offshore accounts in Switzerland, real estate purchases in London. The $242 million was being laundered, dispersed, and spent faster than anyone could track. Sakaguchi, now deeply invested both financially and personally, pushed for more funding. The bank transferred additional millions. 200 million became 220 million, then 242 million. At this point, Banco Noroeste had committed nearly 3% of its total assets to a single project in a foreign country. Red flags were everywhere, but the promise of unprecedented returns kept everyone moving forward. The psychology at play was textbook sunk cost fallacy. Sakaguchi had staked his entire career on this deal. He had convinced the board, vouched for the project's legitimacy, and personally overseen the transfers. Walking away now would mean admitting he had made a catastrophic error in judgment, so instead, he doubled down. Each time Nwude requested additional funds, Sakaguchi found ways to justify the expense. Other executives at Banco Noroeste began voicing concerns more loudly. Why was there no independent verification? Why hadn't they hired a third-party firm to conduct site inspections? Some board members demanded answers, but Sakaguchi had cultivated enough political capital within the institution to deflect these questions. He presented his meticulously maintained files, the photographs, the architectural plans, the glowing progress reports. He reminded his colleagues of the projected returns, the strategic importance of establishing a foothold in African infrastructure development. Then, in late 1997, everything began to unravel. A routine audit at Banco Noroeste uncovered irregularities in the airport project accounts. The auditors conducting their standard annual review noticed something troubling: a massive concentration of funds flowing to a single international project with unusually vague documentation. The payments didn't follow normal banking protocols. Authorization signatures seemed inconsistent. The supporting documents, while appearing official, lacked the standard verification codes that genuine government contracts typically contained. What raised the most red flags was the sheer magnitude of the disbursement compared to documentation trail. For a project of this supposed scale, there should have been dozens of regulatory approvals. Instead, the files contained mostly correspondence between Sakaguchi and Nwude's associates, along with those suspiciously polished progress reports. The auditors escalated their concerns to senior management, who made the decision to bypass Sakaguchi entirely and contact the Central Bank of Nigeria directly through official diplomatic channels. They sent a formal inquiry to Paul Ogwuma's office, requesting confirmation of the airport project and verification of the financial arrangements. When auditors requested documentation directly from the Central Bank of Nigeria, they received a response that would send shockwaves through the Brazilian financial system. There was no airport project. There had never been any approval for foreign investment in airport construction. Paul Ogwuma, the supposed partner in the deal, had never authorized any such transaction. In fact, Ogwuma's office stated that no such proposal had ever crossed his desk, and that the signatures on the documents Banco Noroeste possessed were crude forgeries. The realization hit like a freight train. Banco Noroeste had been funding a ghost. Sakaguchi had been corresponding with con artists. The receipts, the contracts, the government seals, all of it was fake. The photographs of construction sites were old images of unrelated projects. The officials Sakaguchi had met were actors and accomplices. The site visits had been elaborate theatre productions designed to maintain the illusion. Panic spread through the bank. The board immediately launched an internal investigation. Within weeks, the full scope of the fraud became clear. $242 million gone. Vanished into a labyrinth of offshore accounts and shell companies. The bank's stock price plummeted. Investors fled. Regulatory agencies descended upon the institution. Banco Noroeste, once a pillar of Brazil's financial sector, teetered on the brink of collapse. The Brazilian Federal Police, in coordination with Interpol and Nigerian authorities, began the hunt for Emmanuel Nwude. But Nwude had prepared for this moment. he had established multiple identities. He had safe houses scattered across West Africa. He had moved most of the money through channels so complex that tracing it would take years. For months, Nwude remained a ghost. He bribed officials. He changed locations constantly. But the net was closing. In 1998, Nigerian authorities finally caught up with Emmanuel Nwude. He was arrested along with his accomplices in Lagos. The arrest made international headlines. This was one of the largest individual scams in history. $242 million stolen through nothing but confidence, forged documents, and the exploitation of human greed. Nwude's defense was simple. He claimed he had been a legitimate intermediary, that others in his network had deceived him as well. He argued that he believed the airport project was real, that he had been acting in good faith. The court was not convinced. In 2004, after years of legal proceedings, Emmanuel Nwude was convicted. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison for fraud and forgery. His accomplices received sentences ranging from 12 to 18 years. The court also ordered Nwude to pay restitution of $10 million and forfeit properties worth another $121 million. But even with these forfeitures, the vast majority of the stolen money has never been recovered. As for Banco Noroeste, the bank never recovered from the scandal. The loss of $242 million, combined with the reputational damage, proved catastrophic. In 2001, the bank was sold to Banco Santander in a distressed acquisition. Nelson Sakaguchi, the director who had championed the airport deal, was convicted of banking violations and negligence. He served time in prison and saw his reputation destroyed. Emmanuel Nwude's scam stands as one of the most brazen confidence schemes in history. He didn't hack computers. He didn't break into vaults. He simply understood that the biggest weakness in any financial system is human greed. And with nothing more than confidence and forged paperwork, he convinced an entire bank to hand over $250 million for an airport that was never for sale. Subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.